Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined by Kevin Graham and Tony Haggerty. I must say that JP Mason, who is a very valued member of the team, is actually at a funeral today. It was one of his very, very close friends, so thoughts and prayers with JP at this moment in time. So we have Kevin and Tony on the show, sitting in. We've got a bit of old school with Kevin and a bit of old school with Tony's tracksuit top. So we will move right in. Loads to talk about. But before we do that, I've mentioned your tracky top. I'm now going to have to focus on your T-shirt, Kev. I do believe you were away to see the Mary Chain this week.
I went to see them on Sunday night at the Barrowlands. It was good to be back at the Barrowlands once again after over 2 years, I think it was. What I did find about the Barrowlands is Baird's is now another pub, which I was completely taken aback with.
Quite a trendy-looking bar as well.
It is quite a trendy-looking bar. I was quite disappointed in that, but the Mary Chain were fantastic. They were doing Darklands, the album, and it was brilliant. Just great to be back at a gig again. Strange to be back at a gig. That's my first gig since November 2019. So, it was brilliant. Really good to get back. The band were fantastic. They were delicate. They were loud. It was really good. I really enjoyed it again.
Did you say November 2019, mate?
November 2019, I went to see the Twilight Sad at the Usher Hall. No, not the Usher Hall. It was the Usher Hall in Edinburgh. It was the Usher Hall in Edinburgh.
Right, so I'm going to wrap this up.
I met JP Mason that night because he sent me a T-shirt once again with the Twilight Sad.
He is a multi-skilled individual. I'm going to wrap it up because people are saying, what are we talking about music for? Get on to the AGM. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying that the guy or the imagery over your head, Kevin, is Screamadelica. You're on a show called Screamaselica, which is Screamadelica with a Celtic tinge. The last gig I was at was Primal Scream at the Barras in December 2019. And of course, Bobby Gillespie, lead man of the Scream, made his live debut for Primal Scream on the same night that he made, and on the same stage that he made his live debut as a drummer for the Jesus and Mary Chain. I think that's absolutely tremendous. And a big Celtic man as well, Bobby is. AGM. Right, we're not streaming on Twitter yet. We have asked StreamYard what the story is, and they did get back to us, so they're looking into it. Several fan groups, Kevin, have already protested in recent weeks in relation to this Celtic board, who some of whom were at the AGM yesterday. It's pretty clear from yesterday's AGM that there is very little confidence in this board, and it's also pretty clear that, the reaction that Ange Postecoglou got is, that he has been not only accepted by the Celtic fans, but we almost see him and the board as completely separate. You've got Ange Postecoglou. He's not part of that problem at the club. He's talking our language. And then you hear the likes of Ian Bankier, and he's so far removed from the way the normal punter thinks. I always expect that in a massive business, Kev, but not to this degree. He hasn't got a clue.
It was quite frightening. I mean, obviously we were on live yesterday, so there was stuff coming in the comments that I could see, and I was thinking to myself, God, surely he hasn't says that. Surely that's just somebody misquoting a tweet or something like that. But there was one thing that stood out to me, and it was his last comment after a series of horrible comments, when he actually says, you've given it quite a lashing today to the audience. And they're the words of your chairman. And who uses the term lashing now? Really?
I'm thinking of schoolmaster giving a pupil a lashing,
It's a class thing, ain't it? It's a real class thing. Yeah. Who uses the term lashing? And the use of that word showed exactly what he thought of the Celtic fans. Shows exactly what he thinks of us, that he used the term lashing. Now, this is a guy who's been in post since 2011, and he's a man that I know very little about. I know very little about his role. But to actually say lashing, and even the word lashing is an understatement, Paul. Let's be truthful here. He was booted about in the question and answer like a flyaway football on a school playground. He was absolutely handed one because Peter Lawwell wasn't there to protect him. And Peter Lawwell's dug him into so many holes over the last couple of years. Another thing that really annoyed me was they made very little attempt to win the room, didn't they? He was spoiled, he was petulant, and he was entitled. And look, the whole organisation seems to be like a bit narcissistic, a bit bullying, and a bit entitled. I'm not saying that it is, but I've had enough experience of folk like that in real life to say that it's quite dangerous, and they're a bit fantasists really if they actually believe what they're saying. And if they actually believe what they're saying to an audience at the AGM, which for the first time in years and years, they got a kicking in the room. Usually they didn't get a kicking in a room. Usually they get the kicking outside on social media. This was actually brung into the Kerrydale suite yesterday. And the way that Bankier reacted saddens me to the core. And I've said previously that the thread of connection's getting looser and looser with me. A loose fit, if you will, after seeing Gaz Whelan last week. And days like yesterday, I've got nothing to actually say that it's going to improve anytime soon.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that, Kev, because I think we're in the beginnings of change. I really do. I think the very fact, Kev, that you mentioned there, often these things go without a whimper. It was different yesterday. The attitude has completely changed. The pendulum has swung in the direction of a fan base who have already, as I say, protested. And a couple of the points that were brought up yesterday, Kevin, discussed, and they were non-committal in them. I think that when certain decisions are made in the coming weeks and months, that pendulum won't just swing. It's going to be like a gong, because the sound of discontent amongst the Celtic fans has already been heard, and it will be maximised if certain decisions are made, which, by the way, they were asked about. First thing I'm going to ask you, Tony, is, first of all, with regards to Ange Postecoglou, we've been talking on this podcast about him being backed in January. We had a discussion about the changes to our main title challengers, Rangers, and what's happening over there. Does that change anything for January? Some people think, we should have had everything in place anyway. Other people are saying we need to ramp it up. It's an opportunity. They're weakened. What they did say yesterday, what Ian Bankier did say, is that, we have been given assurances that Ange will be backed in January. Now, we've never been the best in the January transfer window, Tony. We've spoken on the pod. Some contributors reckon 4, some contributors reckon 6. We require bodies in. Ange just said it himself. He's identified areas that he needs to strengthen. That board, when you already consider the fact that they're on a shaky peg, as you say, if they go through January and we don't get what we need in the door, it will be panic stations at that stage, because, again, that is another massive negative in terms of what we're already protesting against.
Prove it. They made a big deal about yesterday being in rude financial health, and they were going to back the manager to the hilt in January. Prove it. Go and win that title in January. Give the manager what he needs, because the most popular person in that room by a country mile was the manager. And goodness only knows what he thought of it. Right? He's getting cheered to the rafters. And these guys are so emotionally, spiritually, and physically and mentally detached from everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
The only one that connected was Ange. And then they're saying, we're going to back this guy. That's words. Actions Celtic fans want in January. Prove it. Because you could win the title in January if you bring in the right kind of players and you prove that you are in rude financial health. That's the one thing you can say, that they did come out of COVID in rude financial health, which was their statement, which they wanted to let all the fans know. That's fine. Well then, no point in it sitting there when you've got a big treasure trove, big treasure chest that you can, and bounty that you can win come May. Go and prove it. That is a time for Celtic to put your money where your mouth is. Put up and shut up, and go and earn yourself those stripes by backing the most popular man in the room yesterday. And this is a guy who's flown halfway across the world. He's been here for 5 months, and he's the most popular man sitting at that top table in the AGM. yesterday. That tells you something, doesn't it?
And he's come over, and we've mentioned this as well. He's
Himself.
come over without all these demands of your Eddie Howe's and
Himself.
various other managers who expect to bring a bus of staff with them.
Yeah, and I know there was the AGM this week, but I don't know if you saw the fan media conference. Well, we put it out. You know, and you listened to him, and he gave you an insight into what made him tick. And you think to yourself, wow, this guy's gotten it within 5 months. Yet guys that have been there for years and years and years couldn't be more detached from it all. It's incredible, isn't it? It's utterly incredible how this guy has come in and in that fan media conference, he opened up, you know, about doing things, winning football matches with meaning, with purpose, but also doing it in life, in your everyday life. You know, see if you're on the board at Celtic Football Club, this is your everyday life. You care about that. You nurture it. You have your ear to the ground. You listen first and foremost. But these guys at the top, I don't know what's the problem with them. And as you say, they're so detached that it will become their undoing. Because I wrote in the Celtic Way yesterday that it was a winter of discontent AGM, and it's not going to stop.
See, the thing, Tony, just in the opening minutes of this podcast, I think we're talking about you know, a Celtic board who for many decades now have relied on a figure who would be able to deal with virtually anything that was thrown at them. And often what happens is if that figure is so strong and so dominant as Fergus McCann and Peter Lawwell have been, then there's a lot of other people who are part of that team who are just free-flowing along. You know, they're not actually contributing a great deal because you've got such a powerful figure. And at the end of the day, we're not rewriting history. Peter Lawwell was a very powerful figure, you know, in many, many ways. I think he lost his zest near the end of his tenure at Celtic.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never been in an AGM, Paul, because I'm not a shareholder, but see if Peter Lawwell has made all those AGMs, like, not move along, nothing to see. The man's a miracle worker, a complete and utter miracle worker. I mean, and maybe given time, I'll reassess my thoughts on him. I'm certainly reassessing. You know, people have thoughts about Lawwell, but I think on the whole, he did a wonderful job. But if that was one of his jobs, then my goodness, you know, what a job! What a performance every other year. You take that kind of flack, Kevin.
I don't know if he lost his zest, Paul. I think he maybe lost his focus and got focused on one thing. And that was the 10, and that was the legacy of his 10, and that was his downfall. That was the biggest downfall that he had.
You see, the thing as well, Kev, when you're talking about a figure like Peter Lawwell, at this moment in time, I still feel that we're a bit rudderless at that level. And the very fact that Ange has come in, like Tony's described, and embedded himself within the football club, but he's also done that with the fans. I mean, there's been 2 occasions now, very publicly, where he's fielded questions at press conferences just for fan groups. But you also speak to other fans who bump in. I mean, Declan McConville bumps into him every other day, it would seem, the amount of times he's got a selfie with him. But he's selling himself to every individual Celtic fan that he meets.
What depends on it? If I was having a look at this in my utterly romantic world, my only football romantic world, my wife will actually say I haven't got a romantic bone in my body. My football romantic world, I would actually say that Postecoglou's been waiting for this job all his life. He was born to do a Celtic job because of his background, and he's maybe he's maybe now realised that.
He said that the other day to the Australian guy who gave an interview to.
Did he? I haven't seen that yet.
That radio interview, yeah. And he said the only reason that he hadn't got that job was because of his nationality. But he now feels, and you know, and the biggest thing that I took from the fan media conference and the radio interview was that it made you proud that he was your manager. I've said before, I don't really care who's at the top of the tree running my club, as long as they're winning football matches and you can identify with the people that matter most, and that's the manager and the players. And I think at this moment in time, whilst there's unrest with all the figureheads at the top, Celtic fans are really happy and they feel proud that this guy's their manager, you know, and he's starting to win football matches, and that's all you want. And they'll continue to work away and see if they can oust the people at the top, but it's always been an impossible task, hasn't it? Mission impossible, but it's maybe becoming more mission probable now, just the way the AGM went yesterday. But they've got a manager that they identify with, and as long as he's doing the right things, then, he will continue to get the supporters backing, and they'll enjoy the ride that Ange is going to take them on. And, this guy, as I say, he's sacrificed a lot, but as Kevin said there, he is now saying things like, I was born to do this. I was confident that I could do this. The only thing that went against me was the fact I was Australian. You know what I mean? Not going against in the eyes of the Celtic supporters because they don't care.
And that's a horrible thing, Tony. The only thing that was against him was the fact he was Australian. What does that say about us Europeans? What does that actually say?
Of course, So he's loving life. I don't think he's liking wee Declan stalking him every day. So I would be a Steers inquiry, maybe get an APB out and wee Declan. You know what I mean?
The most recent picture was a belter, and I said it looked as though Ange was passing him a Werther's original, because he does have that look that he's always got a packet of them in his pocket and a packet of Marlboro Lights in the other pocket. Right. So the resolutions to re-elect Bankier and Brian Wilson went to a poll. Even that, Kev, is progress. Now, my problem that I've got with it, because I know exactly what Tony's saying there, are we getting to that stage where maybe even through a natural process, some of these guys who have been in there for too long and they're ineffective and they're not contributing enough will be filtered out? I don't even think the very fact that it was pretty clear we don't want you on the board will actually land with these guys, Kev. I don't think that they will take a blind bit of difference, because going back to what you say, there is that class thing where it's like, what do you guys know?
I know. And we saw that last year, and we all know that we can all put two and two together and maybe get 6. But the protest against Neil Lennon last year stopped Neil Lennon being removed from post in October, because they couldn't be seen to back down to the malcontents. And again, that just...
Nice, not the view term there, malcontents. Yeah.
I love it as a term, but again, sitting in that room, they're not going to take much notice. They think that they've done a good job. And that was something that came out yesterday, where they actually says on and off the park in the last 10 years, we've done a decent job. And I'm never going to get an applause from this room, so why should I even bother? And that is horrible. That is an absolute horrible.
When the board are to blame, I never kicked a ball, he says.
Me being a poet, I've been in rooms where he didn't get an applause, so I know where it is. But you don't say it. You don't automatically come out and say it. I just thought that the contempt that they showed was unbelievable.
I thought that was a pregnant pause, Kev, with you on stage. I thought that was all deliberate.
I hope it was.
I think the Celtic supporters did want to clap him in irons. You know what I mean? So, you've got to just say there was just a total misreading of the room, wasn't there? I think even at one point, Bertie or Scott Brown was showing.
I was about to mention this, Tony.
Should bring him back. See if that's your thought.
He says we need him back.
Yeah, and somebody in the crowd said you should never have let him go in the first place. So, you're just like, how's that for being out of touch? And a comment came in there, Kev, I've just seen it. Ange never said it was because he was Australian. He said he didn't get a job because of his passport. It's a similar thing, isn't it?
No, I think so. I think we can kind of guess what he's kind of meaning when he says stuff like that.
There's an attitude, there's a disdain for non-European football in some clubs' minds, whereby they've seen it as a massive risk to bring somebody in whose main roles previously had been in Japan and Australia, although he managed briefly in Greece as well. And I think that was an attitudinal issue. And thankfully, Celtic have broken through it, because what it shows us is that, the approach that he's brought in and the knowledge that he has brought in, he spoke about this in the presser as well, Tony, the knowledge of other markets. I mean, Kyogo is a shining example of it, but he's talking about other markets, not just the Japanese market, that he has got a good knowledge of.
He was reining himself in when he was speaking.
He was a bit.
He was like, right, yeah.
I'm not giving too much away here.
There's good players in Iran. And then
I was googling Iranian players last night.
Right, he's eat, sleep, and drinking. You think, right, who's he alluding to, right? But The minute he said that, he was like, "Oh, I didn't say that. Sorry." But you get, I mean, his knowledge is extensive, right? And I'll sit here and admit, when his name was first linked with the job and then he got the job, I felt underwhelmed. But like everyone else, I went away and I did my homework on him. The more you read and the more you found out, you thought, okay, this guy's been pretty successful, right? You know, let's see what he's got. He comes in and he's got a 50% win rate. I'm still no, that's not so good if you're a Celtic manager, but no, you give him a chance. But now you realise, okay, well, what a set of circumstances he came into. You allow for that. You know, I just want to see Celtic win, so I'm a bit impatient, and I maybe was a bit hard on them. I'll admit that. You know, that's no getting away from that. But I never at once did I say I disliked him, and I never wanted him to be there. Now I'm actually delighted that he's there because he is. And the last week has made me even proud that he's there because he's a bit of a statesman. Actually, he speaks so well, and
he's the only guy galvanising the fans at the minute.
He's taken the club to his heart because this is something that he's coveted all his managerial life. And Celtic were the first to say, right, okay, we'll give you what you crave. And he's pouring his heart and soul into it. You can see that, you can tell that. And he's also telling you, look, this is what I'm up to. You know, I'm not worried about what's happening over the other side of the city with Rangers. He genuinely, he's just so focused and so determined on making Celtic a success again and winning silverware. And fair play to him. And, you know, and they see the things. We've spoken about various things about his man management, getting tunes out of certain players. You can see that all now coming to fruition, and he's got a harmonious bunch. You know, he keeps getting asked, what about Jota? And he's so relaxed about, you know, just the way he handles those kind of things. You know, and he has the greatest thing, which I've alluded to before. He's got the obdurate eyes on everything. He's not come in with any preconceived notion of what Celtic is or how he should be as a manager. He's coming in with a fresh set of eyes on everything. And that's priceless to Celtic at this moment in time. He's not wrapped up in it. You know, he's standing outside and
I get that
objectively.
Absolutely get that.
Wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is. Remember, Fergus wanted to get away from that, Tony. He wanted to appoint non-British managers who maybe didn't have the connection with Celtic. And when you're looking at Wim Jansen and Joseph Venglos, you know, there's two examples of managers. And he actually said in his parting advice that he gave, it was Alan McDonald that took over the role, wasn't it, Kev? And he says to him, do not appoint Kenny Dalglish, because there was talk that Dalglish was coming in as the manager. And initially the plan was to bring him in as the manager of Celtic, but it was Dalglish who pushed for John Barnes, and McDonald gave him what he wanted. But Fergus McCann made that very point, Tony, that sometimes you need someone who isn't wrapped up passionately in the emotion of Celtic so that they can actually get the job done first and foremost. And I think it's important, as much as, you know, there's other points in today's show where we're going to be talking about the roots of Celtic and the fact that there is a need to have Celtic people in the club, which is, I think, a fair point when you're talking about the board, because there's a question as to whether or not they are indeed Celtic people. When we're looking at the fact that the appointment of Ange Postecoglou was sold to us as being partly a Dominic McKay appointment. Dominic McKay wasn't even mentioned yesterday, Kev. He's not even a footnote in the AGM. Was that a surprise to you?
Did he even exist? That's a question that must be asked. Was he even in the building? Was it in some parallel universe that I go down that Dominic McKay was only in that parallel universe? I found that surprising. I also found surprising that Neil Lennon wasn't mentioned either. I thought it might have been like, we thank Neil for his time at the club when they're reviewing the season, but that wasn't done. I think it was very telling that the guys sitting at the top of that room in their videos and in person didn't actually mention Dom McKay whatsoever. You can make of that what you will. I also thought it was very telling that nobody in the question and answers asked it as well, because they know who to blame. They're not going to bring McKay into it when the guys who are to blame are sitting in front of them. I thought there was two narratives there, and The board don't want to mention them, and the fans didn't need to mention them because they know what's happened.
I'm going to bring in some comments coming through. As I was saying earlier on, we are working towards getting them back live on Twitter. But in the meantime, get onto YouTube and watch us there. Get subscribing as well. I've got a few free gifts to give away. It's been a busy start to the month, Kev. I've got a few free prizes that I need to give out to the subs. We had a couple of tickets to Bend It Like Bertie, and we will be talking about the late, great Bertie Auld at some point today as well. They were given out to a lucky winner. I've got other things. I've got a watch, and I've got a Bobby Lennox signed and framed print to give away as well. So we'll be doing that at some point today. Get on the socials and you'll see who is winning the prizes. Jamie Young also says you should put the wee reminder button on. I think that'll be the notifications button on the YouTube. I'll speak to the technical wizard who's sitting across the table from me to see if he can figure out how to do that, or if it needs to be done independently by every subscriber. Donny Boy 67. I think we all have the fear of the board not backing him, and he walks. I hope this isn't the case, but who knows with our board. I think at this moment in time, we're going into a January, and I'll come to you first, Kevin, on this, and I think Ange Postecoglou is in a fantastic position, because if, for example, he wasn't to get what he wants, I don't think he's going to be demanding 8, 9, 10 players, but if he doesn't get what he wants, then that must be in the back of this board's mind. You know, we have got probably the only figure at the moment who's galvanising the club with the fans, and that's Ange Postecoglou. He's a great head of the football department at this moment in time. They can't afford him to walk. They've got to keep him happy.
He's got them out of a hole. He's got us united. They got to support United with the team in that again, and that allows them to do what they need to do in the background. I mean, can we trust them to back them in January? That's a big question. Can we? I wouldn't trust this lot to go down the shop for some custard creams. Never mind anything else. They'll try and do as little as possible, as history goes. I mean, they will try and do as little as possible. I always go back to this when I see the board in action. I always go back to another musical reference here. John Lydon on the stage of the Hollywood Ballroom in San Francisco in 1978. As the Sex Pistols were imploding all around. And he actually says, do you ever get the feeling you've ever been cheated? And I think the AGM confirms in what we've seen previous transfer windows that we're cheated every day as Celtic fans. I mean, come on, let's have a look at what he even says about European football. What did he say about European football? He justified your failure in European football by saying European football's changed over the last 20 years.
Yeah,
and
we should expect to get scalped by the likes of PSG and Barcelona.
Aye,
that's basically in essence what he was saying, you know.
But should we expect to get scalped off Ferencváros and Malmo? I mean, that's all we're asking, that doesn't happen. I mean, he defended it by saying they had been successful off the pitch by selling players and domestically. But for me, what's it, 2 group stages in 8? For a club that claims to be a Champions League club, is nothing but a big fat F on that exam paper. And I think what's actually been proved, that their only ambition is to keep the old firm alive, and that's the only thing that they've succeeded in. So in January, I expect them to try and get away with just doing enough to win the league.
That's
just doing enough.
Yeah, that's a big concern, I think. Tony, Kevin brings up, I'm jumping forward a wee bit here, but he brings up the European ambitions of this club. Now, what is the club? That's a big question. What is the club? Because the club for me is the fans as much as it's the board, but the board's ambitions differ greatly from the fans. Now, we're realistic enough to know that to try and go toe-to-toe with Europe's elite these days is different from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. However, as Kevin rightly says, we're not even going toe-to-toe with teams that we should be competing with previous to this season, up to this season. You know, the champion, Midtjylland, should we not be beating Midtjylland in a Champions League qualifier?
And why is that? Because we're successful in selling our best players. Right? Celtic supporters don't want to hear that. We want to be successful in keeping our best players and making us some kind of reasonable force in Europe. Matt O'Neill did it. We managed to keep a hold of our best players and we went toe-to-toe with them all. Right? That's recent history. So you can do it. All you have to do is back the manager and ask guys to stay 3-4 years before they go elsewhere. And I understand the money and the riches they can get elsewhere is great, but And Ange strikes me as the kind of manager as well. I don't think he would sign a non-disclosure agreement. I think he's too honest. I think he would tell you, I've left because of them. You know what I mean? You know, and he would tell you, he would spill, and he would say, I asked for this, this, and this. I didn't get it. You know, and that's how much the Celtics in Ange we trust. That's the motto, isn't it, of the Celtics supporters right now? And that's why they trust him, because they reckon, you know what, there's a kindred spirit here. In 5 months, he's become a Celtic supporter. He's drank in everything about the club, and he wants to give it his all and give it his best shot. And as Kevin rightly says, you don't trust the guys at the top, you know. And in the last window, he said at one point, didn't he? I've asked for players, but I don't think I've been forceful enough. But he was quoted saying that, wasn't he?
He did. He was going to write about it in his book.
Yeah, right. So, so this time he's clearly been forceful because we believe there's deals bubbling under the surface. He's clearly said to them, I want this, this, and this. Sort this out, you know. And if they don't do it, then he's quite perfectly within his rights to come out and have a rip. I'm not saying he'll walk away. I think the bond he's got with the fans at this moment in time, you know, would see him stay, certainly at the end of the season, see where they're at. But, you know, he is trying to win a title with one of his hands tied behind his back, you know, and swinging every now and again. You know, the board really do have to say, do you know what? We'll cut the ribbon off your other arm and we'll arm you with those tools. Because if he is the man, this is the man that they believe can win that access to 40 million by qualifying, winning a league and qualifying automatically for the Champions League, then they have to back him. And they said those words in those pre-recorded interviews. Those were the words that they said. We want to back him. We want to win the title. We want to get into the Champions League. So there's no going back on that. We're in rude financial health, which again was probably in a roundabout way a wee cheap dig at Rangers and their rivals on the other side of the city. And that's all fine. You can see what you like about those things. But your rivals across the city waltzed off with the title that you coveted most. Right? That's a fact. History won't say that they won it because of COVID or X, Y, or Z excuse.
No.
History will say they won the title by 25 points. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like a lumpet. And you can talk about your rude financial health. You can talk about, well, European football doesn't matter. It matters to supporters. And if you're on that board and you're not a supporter, then you're no fit for purpose.
Absolutely, Kev.
See, for me, Tony, we didn't win that title because they lacked the ambition and the backing that they're saying that they're going to give Ange. That is exactly why we didn't win that. That is exactly why we failed after Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah,
that is it. And we can go back, and I get. Look, I mention Brendan all the time, but we chased that guy at the club. We chased that boy at the club.
It comes down to one thing and one thing only: ambition. And
the ambition he had was too expensive.
Right, and whether they're lofty or not, you know, the phrase speculate to accumulate, there are times when you have to do that. This is one of those times.
Don't stockpile the cash.
You will get it back tenfold. You was a license to print a blank cheque if you won 10 in a row. You could have marketed anything with 10 on it, and I mean anything. Yet the board couldn't see that, and they did. And for once, you know, even their business practices, they didn't even think of it as a business, or think of it with their heart as an investment. You know, as a supporter, think what it meant to win the 10. They just didn't think. End of. Because they were too busy being arrogant, ignorant, or whatever, or aloof. You know, because that's who they are. They're as detached from you now as a Celtic supporter as they've ever been, yet you feel a bit powerless to prevent it. But certain things that happened in the AGM, give you hope that the ones that you want removed will, over time, be replaced by people with the club's best interests at heart, and also people who are supporters and will listen to what the likes of you, Kevin, and I are saying.
For me, I think the PLC fought 10 was done and dusted. I think they were already in their heads. They were already at their legacy stage. I'll leave once we've done the 10, and everybody will love me because I've done that. And they took the eye off the ball.
It's like rounding the goalkeeper and hitting the ball towards goal and running away and celebrating as the ball's turned on towards and the defender coming in and kicking it away at the last minute, isn't it?
Complacency.
Yeah.
The big thing for me, as I say, I think we're in the roots of change. I really do. And I think that when we look back in years to come, we will see last season and some of the moments last season as being the very beginnings of that. Kevin's been talking about them not being fit for purpose for a number of years. And a lot of people don't listen to that whilst the success is rolling on. And it's understandable as well. One of the big things, one of the big key moments, I think, in the coming weeks and months will be whether or not Celtic go ahead with the appointment of Bernard Higgins. And from what I was hearing yesterday with their non-committal answers, I would not bet against them going ahead and appointing this guy. Now, if they do it, Kevin, we've already seen that there are sections and groups within the support who are protesting against the running of this football club. Do you see this as being the beginning of the end if they appoint Higgins?
I definitely hope so. I really do. I mean, even yesterday, they tried to change the nature of the role of what he's supposedly not coming in the club to do. I mean, Celtic could hit this on the head right away and go, he's never been interviewed, he's never been this, he's never been that, he's not getting anywhere near Celtic Football Club. But for me, the fact that yesterday they went, no, it's a bigger role, it's no security, it's no just to manage Celtic fans, says to me, this man will be in the building soon enough. And
that's the impression I got.
If it is, then that's the end game for them and the Celtic support. And we as a support then need to start having a look at the only action that the club will actually stand up and take notice of, and it's financial action. The club only listen to coins dropping into the coffers, and once that clinking stops, then they'll listen. Look, if we actually appoint Bernard Higgins, it's a massive V sign to all the other clubs in Scottish football who were Scottish fans of clubs in Scottish football who were targeted under the Offensive Behaviour Act.
Yep.
It's a massive, we're not caring about you as well. It's an utter misstep. And if they do it, I hope it's the beginning and the end of this regime.
Another example, Paul John, of the detachment, just the utter detachment and isolation that these guys are from ordinary rank and file supporters of any club. If this man caused the mental health and well-being of football supporters, to be questioned. He affected their mental health and well-being. Celtic supporters among them, and supporters of other football clubs. He should be nowhere near the Celtic board. It is the biggest slap in the face, and it would be the biggest V sign to the Celtic supporters and those ones that are protesting. And it would be Celtic just saying, "We're taking you on. We're not having any of this, right? Yep. We're going toe to toe with you. How about you work as a Celtic board and try and get a team in the park that can go toe to toe with Ferencváros and Malmo, rather than getting this guy in who's going to go and toe to toe with your rank and file." Just an utter, incredulous appointment. But as Kevin alluded to there, they don't care because they don't hear it. They don't see it. They don't get it. So in anything that can quell kind of unrest, as they see it, is a good thing in their eyes. Celtic fans aren't protesting for a laugh. Protesting for a reason, because you guys aren't fit for purpose. Bottom line.
There's also a reason this is in the public domain. Is because somebody close to the club or within the club knows I need to get this out there because the reaction's going to be unreal.
Yep.
And I need to try and make the board or whoever's making the decision see what will happen if this happens.
Do you blame any football supporter who's been affected by the actions of this guy, the Offensive Behaviour and Football Act, whose health has been affected by it? You know, if you blame any supporter,
Fellow football fans, Tony, of many different clubs, yep.
and I'm talking about I'm not just talking about Celtic, but Celtic fan especially, because this guy might be coming into the club, but any football fan that's been affected by this guy, you know, and their mental health, he should be nowhere near a football club, you know, and you know, it's just a shame that they're going to bring this guy on board. Let's be honest.
The thing is, like Kevin said, someone at that club has realised that this is it's a huge misstep, right? And it's been released somehow to the public, and the question was raised at the AGM, and they didn't deny it. So you can see that there are people within that club who are looking up the chain and thinking, what on earth? They're thinking just like us, Kev. Now, there are people at that club who care for Celtic. They're big Celtic fans. We know some of them. There's people listening to this will know some of them who work for the club, and they do so with pride. Walking in those front doors every day is a proud, proud moment. Every single day walking into their work. So we're not trying to brandish everybody with the same brush here. This is a very small amount of people with a huge amount of power at Celtic Football Club. But if they go ahead...
All the power they've got.
All the power, yep, absolutely. But I think that once they make this decision, and I feel it's inevitable, then they will see a backlash unlike anything they could possibly imagine. I'm going to bring this one up because we spoke about Lenny earlier on, who's news, who reckons that we would have won the 10 by signing less high-profile signings. There was definitely a change in tact when it came to the signing policy last pre-season, but we know that the players that had been identified by Neil Lennon were Victor Wanyama, James McLean, Danny Drinkwater, Fraser Foster, Charlie Mulgrew and Robert Snodgrass. I mean, we will never know if that would have done a better job for Celtic, but that is what has come through over the last few months. There's another thing I would need to ask, and I'll come to you first again, Kevin. Director of football? Question mark. What director of football? That seems to be the attitude at the moment as well, going by the response yesterday.
See, maybe don't buy 100% into that, Paul. I think when you saw the Postecoglou presser with the fans, he was saying that we'll have to improve the recruitment and the scouting. And when he says recruitment, for me, that means bringing in somebody that's ahead of the recruitment department, which could be a sporting director or it could be somebody similar to actually do that role. So even though the term sporting director is not really mentioned anymore, it's something that Postecoglou for me says that they are looking at, but it's just, I don't know, it's semantics, it's job titles, ain't it? I mean, it is like a sporting director, you think of Bayern Munich and it's Rummenigge. It's a big person. Ajax, it's the goalkeeper, what's his name, Van der Sar.
Do you think Strachan was their man, Kev? Do you think that Strachan was a man? There's a wee bit of a backtracking on that with regards to his role.
That's lazy enough, eh? It's Strachan. It's Strachan that they probably wanted it it's another veto appointment by Dermot Desmond, ain't it?
Yeah.
I would only need to do the interviews. Gordon's already there. He's already willing to leave Dundee and come there. So it's like, and there's no clash. There's no personality clash, is it? Because Gordon fits in with the hierarchy. It's already there. He's already been there. How they work. Yep. He backs him up, and I mean, you know what I mean? Of course it was Strang. But who's going to come in now? It'll probably be somebody not as high profile like your Anton McElhone or somebody like that, but somebody that has got a decent enough background, more than likely for the City group.
That wouldn't surprise me. What's your thoughts on the fact that Peter Lawwell might have been some way involved in the appointment of Ange Postecoglou through that City group connection?
It doesn't surprise me whatsoever, eh? Even though I was surprised yesterday when I was told it shouldn't have really surprised me. And I do think deep down I already knew that, because the fact that it was already a City group team, that there had to be a connection there, that Ange Postecoglou was on our radar, the same as Ronnie Dyler came onto our radar because somebody in the City group told us this guy's could actually do a job for you.
Yeah, and because of the fact that they want to get into either European football, in Ange's case, or into a bigger league than he was already operating in Ronnie Dyler's case, their demands will be lesser. Therefore, Ronnie Dyler comes in and works with everybody he's told to work with. John Collins was given the job before Ronnie Dyler was given it. His job is already secure before Ronnie comes in. Ange Postecoglou comes in and has to work with those round about him. Now, we are looking ahead to this weekend. It's been a while since we've been at Hampden for a football game. Anyway, it's St Johnstone. They're the cup holders, Tony. They're the cup holders. And we're going into that game. It's going to be an emotional day because obviously it's wrapped in the tribute to Bertie Auld. And I was just reading this morning, there's going to be a couple of tributes by the Green Brigade for Bertie, and the club's tribute, or part of that, will be that we'll wear the number 10 shorts. So before we get to the game, let's have a wee talk about the need for a permanent reminder and a permanent tribute to wee Bertie.
Well, you know my thoughts. The 10:30 tunnel. I said it on Monday, right?
I like how this is developing. It's now been named.
The 10:30.
Right, the 10:30 tunnel, right? And I spoke to
We need a clock that never changes for 10:30 there as well. There we go.
Right. And also, I spoke to a guy, Amsterdam Shamrock, and we were having a week and he said, get like the 10:30 tunnel, welcome to paradise. Can they play? Like and this is Anfield sign, right? Get those words right round the tunnel or somewhere in the tunnel. You know, I just think that'd be a brilliant tribute and a lasting tribute to Bertie. The 10:30 tunnel, welcome to paradise, but can they play? As they're headed out, there you go. There's your.
I love it. I love it.
That's what's a no-brainer.
It's got to be done.
You know.
I love it as well, and you've even sold the marketing for the Celtic PR department. Get your photo in the 10:30 tunnel underneath the sign for £10.30. That's
for an extra 10:30.
For an extra 10:30 on top of the tour, you can get your picture underneath that.
You can get a seat in the board.
I love the idea, Tony. I absolutely love it.
Come on, it's like it's a gift horse, isn't it? Really, because as I said on Monday, 2 of his greatest anecdotes took place in the tunnel. Right, and the players, you know, and then as you're walking out, blare the Celtic song. Or blare a version of Bertie singing the Celtic song. You know what I mean? Because he sang it a million times in his life. I mean, what more emotion do you need? What more would you want heading out to Celtic Park? You know what I mean? You wouldn't need any more motivation than that. And also as well, it might actually give you a smile as you're walking out.
Yeah.
You know, and players go out and enjoy themselves and they play in that amphitheatre, that magic arena. You know, I just think I think that's worth considering, is it not? If you're Celtic, don't let.
Well, you heard it on ACSOM first with Tony Haggerty.
I mean, let's this guy was he embodied that team, didn't he? He was the spirit of that team. He was, you know, you just felt like he was the eternal flame of that team, didn't you?
What I like about it is his actions in the tunnel have been described quite correctly as gallus, a brilliant Glaswegian term, gallus. And I think the Celtic Football Club at the moment lacks a bit of that gallus nature, and we're far too conservative, both in their behaviour and their politics as well, Kevin, at the very highest point of Celtic Football Club. So yeah, let's bring it in 100%. St Johnstone, any changes you'd make to the team, Kev? How do you see this one going? I've already predicted a 1-0 narrow victory against this side.
It's funny, football throws up certain quirks that does make you believe that there's a higher power at work at times, And the Bertie Auld thing that we've just mentioned, 52 years since he scored the only goal against St Johnstone in the League Cup final at Hampden, So then the way my mind works, you start to think that it's set up for Celtic's number 10 to score the winner or score a goal in the 30th minute or something like that. But then, who is our number 10? Is our number 10... Saetti, ain't it? Is our number 10,
Oh,
so,
you've just blown that one, Kev.
So that's slim. That's slim to actually happen,
You never know.
I mean, international breaks are strange, especially the games straight out of international breaks. The fitness of the players, both mentally and physically. And Big Ange has already says he's methodical. He'll have a look at the data when thinking about the team selection. But as I look to Saturday night, 2 players are key for me. Kyogo, I hope Kyogo's going to enjoy the wide open spaces of Hampden. And again, a player that's been sort of overlooked, his contribution to us this season has been David Turnbull. Because, look, St Johnstone are going to come and sit in. and they're going to be like David Martindale, like, and they're going to sit there and sometimes you just need that dig for the box, dig for the edge of the box, or a decent set play for your big centre half to go boof into the back of the net. So I think David Turnbull's going to be important in this game. Get an early goal, score first. An early goal, then we're in for a good night as spectators, I think. If we didn't score early, then it's no big deal. We have shown that we can grind out results, and if we lose, then that's just not, it's not written in the stars for Ange that we're going to win that League Cup. It's another step on the journey, but move on. But then, kind of going back to the Bertie Auld thing, like, there was a quote this week that I read that he says that they used to train 5 days a week and get a day off to play football on a Saturday. Let's just go out on Saturday night and just take that on board and just go out, win and entertain us. That's all I'm looking for.
Superb. So put £10.30 on 1-0 a jetty. Well done, Kev. Now, Tony, are you covering the game? You going to be at the game on the weekend, on Saturday?
No, I'm not. One of the other boys from the Celtic way's got that privilege, Sean Martin. So if I'm not going, I'll be on here. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. If selected.
I hope to see you then, if selected, he says. A couple of other wee things we need to run through. First and foremost, the great George Conley, one of my greatest Celtic icons. It will be at the penalty spot before the game on Saturday. The penalty spot is it's in Sword Street in Glasgow, and some incredible Celtic memorabilia will be available. George is going in for a signing session. He doesn't often do signing sessions, and he'll be there from 1 until 3. I think it's 3 on Saturday, but he'll certainly be there. So get in there and get your jerseys and your books and prints and all that kind of stuff signed by the great George Conley. And whenever I think about George, I think about the Quality Street Gang, and always then look at what we've got now in terms of homegrown talent. Now, I'm not going to include Henderson in this because he's not really played this season, and I know we've got Robertson out on loan and he's not really played for Celtic this season. But if you look at the first team squad when all fit, we have Callum McGregor, of course, Jamesy Forrest. Throw any in that I might miss here. Tony Ralston, Stephen Welsh, Mikey Johnstone. Dembele was in the plans. Bad injury means that he's out the plans at the moment, but he's part of the squad. Montgomery's played quite a few games. This is his breakthrough season, even though he had some game time last year. And of course, Hazard, who has won a trophy and was part of the quadruple treble side as well. And I look at that and I think, well, you know, can Celtic, and I'm not comparing that group of players to the Quality Street kids or the Kelly kids or the Lisbon Lions or any other group of players who have come through at Celtic, but can that core group, or can a core group at Celtic Park come through and be the nucleus of a successful Celtic side? How much has changed? Can it still be done, Kev?
I think it can still be done, and I think Ange Postecoglou over the last 2 weeks he's gave Greg Taylor a longer term contract, and he's also gave Anthony Ralston a longer term contract. So he knows the importance of homegrown players and players that know the club. I mean, Anthony Ralston, Tony in his piece for the Celtic Way called him a Cinderella story. I'm more a Billy Boots man myself, so it's like he has been a Billy Boots story, and it's a story about Anthony Ralston that we didn't know where or when or how it's going to finish, but we're now all fully invested in watching it, how it'll go. I mean, he's got his reward, he's got a big contract, and it's always great to see one of our own like doing really well. And more importantly, he's done what the managers asked him to do. And he's doing what a lot of us didn't expect him to actually do. The manager backs him, and that says everything that we need to know. I mean, a few weeks back, I was a bit rude about him. Gave him a bit of a disservice by saying he was like a big lovable puppy that you wanted to do well. We had him all doing as a substitute teacher, like with Juranovic coming in and that, but hey, maybe we've just got to embrace it. He's a good footballer and we've just got to accept that. And he is going to be part of Celtic going forward.
I'll say 4 words, Kevin. Tony Ralston, Scotland player. That says it all, really, doesn't it? The highest honour and accolade you can get. And yeah, I think everybody has been disparaging towards Tony Ralston. But getting back to what you said, that shows you what happens when you have the right manager at the helm of your club.
Yeah.
He turned that boy's fortunes around by placing one thing in him, faith in his ability and getting the right answers. Looked him in the eyes and said, "Can you do me a job? Don't listen to that. Listen to me. I trust you. That's all you need." And he's done it. I called it the Jedi mind trick the other day. Whatever Jedi mind trick Ange's playing and me is doing on the Celtic players, it's working. And I'm being a bit flippant there. It's man management. Not everybody has it. Not everybody can do it. Ange's clearly got it in abundance.
He does, Tony.
He has the Celtic players, dancing to the beat of his drum, and long may it continue, because you just see that even, the nucleus of Scottish players, you could turn them into something pretty special with a guy like that at the helm. He doesn't need to work on Kyogo and, Tom Roderick, because these guys are just naturally gifted footballers. But that's when your management skills come in, when you're working with the likes of Tony Ralston, making David Turnbull better. Brendan Rodgers did it with James Forrest, that kind of thing. That's when you turn around and say, you've got a manager with a wee bit of clout here, somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody that knows the game, and it augurs well for your club.
Yeah, absolutely. Now Lawrence comes in to confirm it is 1-3 on Saturday to see the great George Conley. Now, the point that you make there in relation to Tony Ralston, I think we've got to remember Ange Postecoglou came in, and this isn't being disparaging to anyone, and thought that he could make Barkas a Celtic player. He actually, there was signs there that he was going to run with Barkas, and then obviously the massive issue against Michelin showed, or maybe attitudinal behind the scenes issues that we're unaware of has shown that he was never going to be the goalie.
I wouldn't blame Ange on that. I'd blame Barkas, the player, because Ange gave him every opportunity.
100%. Aye.
To
he believed he could actually get a player out of Barkas.
Yeah, he believed in Barkas.
Yeah.
Barkas maybe didn't believe in himself. Mm-hmm. And he placed the same faith in Barkas, the same faith that he placed in Ralston. Ralston stepped up to the plate, Barkas folded. Some players just can't handle that pressure. Yeah. And he gave him every opportunity to be the Celtic #1 goalkeeper, and he failed miserably.
I think Barkas knows himself that he's went for a Chinese and ended up in a chip, and he just wants to go somewhere else, And even though Postecoglou gave him the chance, he just knows himself.
He gave Ayeti the chance as well. The aforementioned Ayeti gave him a chance. Got him slimmed down. Yeah. He scored against Betis away. Let's not forget. He scored a few goals. But the other player, and the one that slight regret that I've got, is Christie. I think we've seen enough in his early performances under Ange that Christie suited Ange Postecoglou's team. And I thought, this season could have been massive for Ryan Christie, but perhaps he'd already checked out Tony. Perhaps his agent had already started the wheels kind of rolling.
I think there was two things there. I think out of respect for Ange, he played as well as he could right up till he left. And he gave Ange that. He gave Ange's due on that. And I think it was maybe a close run thing. But I think, as you see, he checked out and his mind made up that he wanted to leave, and he wasn't willing to stick around to see what was going to happen under Ange's revolution, for want of a better word. And I think Ange maybe thought, I just got a hold of you too late. I came in too late to change your mind, and you leave with, best wishes. But Christie would have been some player under Ange. He was shown it. He was shown it. And again, going back to that man management, he just wasn't willing. No, you've got to be willing to stay at a club and be happy. And Christie's eyes were elsewhere, maybe where the money he can get. It shows you when he signed for Bournemouth, doesn't it? That he wanted out the door. You know, I could accept it at Crystal Palace or something like that with Edward, a Brentford up and coming with Ayer. I can accept all that, but Bournemouth was a kind of, his mind was made up. He was going down south regardless.
Get down south, Kev.
I think as well, Tony, I can't say that what he says about Ange after he left, he says, I wished I could have stayed there to work under him for longer. I didn't see that as a hollow platitude. I actually thought that was a player. I actually thought it was a player who wanted to work under this man, but his opportunity. But his opportunity to go to England had just come along, and that's it. And I watched him for Scotland the other night, as you say, Paul. And Alan Morrison will back us up. His stats show he would have fitted perfectly in the midfield for Celtic.
Yeah, Yeah, that's more than a regret at the moment. But again, what I'm going to take from that is once we get him fit, and I do think we can get him fit, I'm going to stick to it. I still think that James McCarthy will be the dark horse of that transfer window. I think he's going to be a player under Ange Postecoglou. I think he can work his magic with James McCarthy. Before we go, we've been talking about the great Australian Ange Postecoglou. Well, you will have noticed this morning we have announced that Celts Down Under are our first pod to get signed up for the big charity weekender. It's going to go ahead on the 4th and the 5th of December. Over that weekend, we will be producing 24 hours of content. Now, obviously, we did it last year. It was a massive success at a time of year where people need help all year round, but at Christmas, it sometimes brings it to the fore, doesn't it? That time of year, we were able to raise a lot of money for some very, very needy causes. And we'll be doing again the same at Christmas time this year, the 4th and 5th of December. Get yourself on the YouTube channel, get subscribing to that. We've got some very exciting guests. We've got some collaborations with other podcasts. We've got some live stuff. Hopefully we'll have a Scream of Celica episode thrown in there as well from Kevin Graham. He's got a few really good guests lined up. And it's a weekend of basically going right back to the roots of the club and saying, you know what, let's raise some money for underprivileged people who are vulnerable within our communities and within society, and get that money to them for Christmas. So, you know, kids who might not have woke up to something on Christmas morning, we can make that difference. And we've done it last year as a collective. So we'll be doing it again. So loads of more announcements coming up in the next week or so about who's going to be involved. And I'm looking really forward to that as well, Kevin. Even though somebody described, I can't even say it. I can't actually say it. It was something that it was a quote from Carter, Get Carter, about my eyeballs looking like something. But that's what I looked like on our 24 last year, Kev. But it was all for a good cause, wasn't it?
Definitely, and what everybody raised for charity over that weekend was great. And we'll have to remember it was Scottish Cup final weekend as well on the 20th of December. Well, was it the 20th, 19th of December, whatever it was, eh? So it's a wee bit earlier this year, but it's fantastic that Celts Down Under have already came on board. And it's the Celtic family once again will actually back us that day for the weekend. And we've got some great things planned. And we've also got a game at Tannadice. We'll have the live match day from Dundee United v Celtic for Tannadice on that Sunday. But it's getting to that time of year when you have a look at families that need our help. And the Celtic support always stay up because we were born in charity. That's what we are, and that is what is so close to our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever we raise will be a result because it will help somebody out there, and that's the most important thing. Tony, I hope you can join me for the St Johnstone game. We will be back tomorrow at 12:30, where Tony will be joined by his cohorts, Jim Orr and Laura Bradburn, for another ACSOM Bulletin. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved today on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch. Hopefully we'll be back on Twitter soon. And join us again tomorrow. Thank you, Kevin Graham and Tony Haggerty, for joining me again on A Celtic State of Mind.